account. It's called like Balkan YouTube comments.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love it.
I love
Just
that one.
endless snapshots of just like, oh yeah, this Balkan country, we invented that. Or your mother was an Albanian and your father was a Serb. Yes, and that is why we are the most glorious. Like, no, that's an insult.
Welcome to the Questioning History podcast, where a bunch of us guys with none of the answers ask all the questions. And we haven't already done an entire podcast before this that took 3 hours and are tired now. This is just the banter podcast, and we're joined here by our guest this week, His Majesty emperortigerstar. It's great to see
Howdy.
you again. Just after 15 minutes or so of a break. Yeah,
As far as you know.
as far as we know. Yes, with the magical editing process that goes into this by my dumb skills. But yeah, we got to debate each other in some rather interesting questions. I actually think it was like our best episode. These were really different, and it's really fun. But now we get to relax a bit, and Peter gets to talk.
Yeah, he's finally do input. I couldn't really, no one during the like, how should we teach history? Like Tiger made a really good point about like objectivity, and no one crushed him for the idea of like who decides what objectivity is, and like
a little bit.
yeah, a little bit, but
Yeah.
you could have. I think someone could have pushed for more. It was like because it's the thing with history. Like people always do think from their perspective that they are being objective,
But there
Like-
are absolutes, though.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes. I will do what I must.
I mean, it's pretty clear which is the most influential city in the world, or that Genghis Khan is a better conqueror than Alexander. Like, there are some things that no
Ooh.
matter which perspective you look at, or if you look at it 500 years from now, if you have the data, you can easily come up with the same conclusion.
I'm sorry. Chinggis Khan better than Alexander. I believe you mean Subutai, who did most of the work. Thank you.
Ooh, specimen
Alexander
of the
also had other generals. Come on. And
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm willing to knock them both down a peg. I mean,
no. I'm telling you to
Okay.
name. I'm telling you to
Okay.
name one general who did half the heavy lifting that Subutai did.
Jebe. Easy.
No, Alexander's general. One of Alexander's general who did like half as much as Subutai. Like Subutai did do like entire
Okay.
campaigns on
They're
his own.
the generals did more work fighting each other after his death than actually.
I think there is a big contributor to Alexander's success, and that's not one of his generals, that's his father. So if
Yeah,
you're
I
gonna
know, but-
knock Chinggis
No,
down a
but-
peg, you gotta knock Philip down a peg.
No,
Alexander.
And it's like such a recycled. Like people try all the time to be like, Alexander inherited an army, and that makes him worse.
No,
Did you
I'm not
know
saying
that
that.
a leader had daddy issues. Well,
Like, I know, right? And it's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, because like Caesar didn't inherit an army, or like Scipio didn't inherit, and like people always inherited armies to a greater or lesser extent.
Chinggis
like-
didn't inherit an army.
But you would say
well-
that about Caesar?
It's not been easy for me. It has not been easy for me. And, you know, I started off in Brooklyn. My father gave me a small loan of $1 million.
He only inherited a small inheritance of about $10 million, and he made that into a great empire. Okay.
But like, no, Chinggis didn't necessarily inherit the army, but he was ruler of a people who were basically already inclined to that specific mode of warfare. Like, it's not like he
No.
had to build from.
No.
You're saying the Mongols weren't before Genghis Khan nomadic horse archery warriors.
They weren't basically he had to
I know he organizes them, and like,
yeah. I mean, that's the most important part. They were killing each other for centuries.
Okay, but
It's a
he's-
total shift in mentality.
yeah, I mean, so were the Macedonians.
No,
like-
no.
Well, I mean, yeah. Like literally,
Philip
in
did
last,
the heavy
it's a good
working
comparison.
in like it is a good comparison, but like if we're just talking about the drilling and the groundwork, Alexander expanded upon that, but Chinggis was the conqueror and the reformer. Chinggis kind of it has the traits of both Philip and Alexander, and while that you do get to knock him down a peg exactly like His Majesty said, because of the generals bit. But I think that when comparing Alexander to Chinggis, and it's close, by the way. Chinggis wins by not a wide margin, but he
It's not
gets to be
close.
the reformer and the leader and the ruler.
It's
And
not
those are
close.
three very difficult things to do on their own.
Alexander was all of them, and also an innovator, a military innovator.
The famous innovator that couldn't come up with another city name.
Oh my God, brutal.
Military.
Wait, he named
innovator.
one after a horse.
Military.
Brutal. No, you're done.
Yeah, one
Okay,
after his,
I will give you that.
one after his horse, and also supposedly one after his dog. Although that's less well evidenced. The horse is
Oh.
definite. The dog,
Interesting.
not so definite.
Well, I
Huh.
mean, even though I would knock both of them down a peg because I mean, I like to bash the great man of history theory when I
Yes.
can, but
Yeah.
but if we are comparing like, you know, Alexander and Genghis Khan, I would actually give it to Chinggis because like the thing about Alexander is I don't want to say he was lucky a lot of the time. But that aside, from any bouts of luck, whether it was Persian arrogance or like the Battle of Issus should not have gone that way. Like the you know, but regardless, I think the thing that people forget is that when Alexander was conquering a single entity, the Persian Empire, while that's impressive, he left a lot of the Persian governmental structures in place to keep his conquests effective, down to the point where there were a few Persian satrapies that just decided, hey, you let me still be a satrap, then I'll swear loyalty to you, and then they became factors in the wars of the Diadochi later. And so Alexander didn't have to worry about administration as much, plus he died.
I'm saying, I would say that's all like credit to Alexander. Like,
it's smart, but
really
it's not.
It's
Why
smart
would it be smart? No. I have to disagree on that point since it failed.
Well, no,
it failed.
It didn't
fail.
It worked amazingly.
It failed because he died too soon and generals got greedy. But if Alexander would have lived, who knows if it would have cemented. But what I'm saying is while it is smart, I think that there are ways of being smart that don't make you more impressive in a sense. Because like I feel like that, like, you know, someone can recognize their flaws or find a more, oh, thank God there's this, that makes it so much easier. But that doesn't make them better. It just means that they had an easy way out. And because like with Genghis Khan, he had multiple states that he was conquering with multiple cultures, with the fact that his home
by a factor,
with the fact that his home base, so to speak, his center of administration was not, I mean, they were nomadic. It just wasn't as developed as the other places. He had to build Karakorum, the capital, from like the ground up to do it. And you know, so he had more to deal with. And so if we're comparing the two, I would say that Genghis Khan is better in that respect overall.
More enemies, more challenges.
Hang on.
More land.
Okay, more land, half of it being wasteland. Like half of it being wasteland that
you call it wasteland, but the wasteland was along the biggest trade route on the planet.
Okay, no. But I'm talking about
for each square mile he conquered in China, that's where multiple times that in Anatolia.
And the areas, and also like there were a lot of like nations and empires on those steps that he conquered, like the Karakatay Empire.
Many tribes.
Okay, the same goes to Alexander. Like they're like one of the like Alexander is arguably one of the most misunderstood characters in history. Like the Persian Empire wasn't just you fight the Persian Empire. You fight the Hyrcanians, you fight the Bactrians, you fight the Babylonians, you fight the
which were part of the Persian
under one banner, though.
No, not under one banner.
The Babylonians and the Bactrians at the time were under the Persian Empire. The only really other enemy that Alexander had was India, which that didn't go so well.
Well, but like, so I mean, even before he gets to Persia, there's like Illyria, all the Greek states, and like all like Thracian tribes that he has to deal with as well. But even when
wasn't
he's
that
in,
Philip though? Because it was Philip that unified Greece, not Alexander.
it's Philip
Yeah.
who unifies Greece, that's right. But Alexander then has to basically reunify Greece
Yeah,
because it
Thebes.
rebels after Philip.
Yeah.
So he has to reunify it and
that
win
was
it
pretty
back.
mean stuff.
Um,
Wasn't good luck
and-
for him either.
and yeah, there are like Issus and Gaugamela are two battles where it is like, okay, yeah, you're fighting the might of the Persian Empire, but basically the rest of the campaigns are fighting either tribal or satrapical powers.
Mhm.
So like Granicus is against just like the satrapies of like Asia Minor, and like when he takes like Sogdiana and Bactria, like both of those are kind of not really integrated fully into the Persian Empire. They are under the Persian Empire, but they still have a lot of decentralization where they're starting off entire wars. And like Alexander's biggest struggle in taking Persia is trying to conquer just Sogdiana alone. Like it takes him about 2 years to subdue Sogdiana. Like there are tribes all over the place that like history like focuses on like the big battles. But if you actually read
Yeah.
like the Anabasis, like or Diodorus or something, like Alexander is
Yeah.
regularly dealing with like tribal factions all throughout Persia, and there are loads of tribal bits of Persia which were nominally under Persian control, but still weren't like subjugated by the Persians.
Just to be
Euxine
clear,
was
no
I'd
one's
say this-
saying he fought just a few enemies or just Persia or India. It's just when we're splitting this argument, there's not a lot of room for you to say that he fought more enemies than Chinggis. That
No,
you're
I'm
entering
disagreeing
crazy.
with that. I'm disagreeing with that.
Well, no, if you want to talk about number of tribes, then Genghis Khan would blow however many Alexander fought out of the water.
It's not even
Well,
close.
but
It's
but
not
the-
even
well,
close.
Not
No,
even
but
close.
Okay,
Yeah.
but the thing, but how many tribes do you guys think that Alexander fought? This one, but the thing is, I have no idea how many tribes Genghis fought. I don't even really know how many Alexander fought, but I know that it's a lot. And I
If
know
this
that
is
Genghis
not
is a
if
lot,
this is
and I
not the
think it would be
breaking point, I would like to enter. I would suggest two new arguments to enter this place. Number one is the underdog story, which makes Chinggis so much more interesting. Not that Alexander isn't. There's still a lot of growth and arc in his story as well. But you got to remember, this guy's given the best education money can buy, with the best tutors money can buy. He's given whatever he inherits from Philip, and he inherits a lot.
sorry, none of
Hold on,
none-
wait, wait. Let me make the point.
Almost none
Temujin
of it's
starts
true.
from zero. Like if this is an RPG, this is the hardcore choice where you're going starting with no gear, no armor, no money, no nothing, no connections, from zero. And he had to subdue his job of unifying the Mongols was a lot harder because of the nature of these people.
But almost none of that's true. Alexander was given a first-rate education. That's
Yeah.
true. He
Okay.
wasn't given anything else. He had to fight for being king. He wasn't just
No,
made king.
But
and
he
that was-
still had
no, Georgie.
he
did-
still had like the infrastructure on like
Yeah.
what Greece was. He had a civilization to work with. Even if yeah, sure, you could say that like he had to work to take it, but that stuff was there. That's a different matter of taking stuff and exploiting that for your benefit versus building up from the ground out of scratch.
Okay, but I'm saying that even Genghis isn't really like
Chinggis.
Is there a particular reason why it's sort of like Chinggis is
It-
like
it's just-
is that
it's just
more
tr-
than the
It's transliteration. If you
Yes.
look at the Mongolian, it's Chinggis, but
Yeah.
okay?
One easy way that I'm trying to tell people to just stop these, to make it easy for everything in the algorithm, is just Temujin, which is his real name. To call Genghis Khan is like basically to call Alexander just the Great. So yeah, you can do
we will
Temujin.
give the universal leader the respect he deserves, Dan.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I
Fair
mean,
enough.
he did define. I don't think he did define the Great. It would have been Cyrus, right? Cyrus would have been
So
the
well,
one who made the Great.
Whatever. This is
there
not
must
the
be
point.
one before it. One
Well, I mean,
Sargon.
wasn't his official title? Well, because like the Great
Universal
is
ruler,
like a
yeah.
more modern term, but like wasn't Cyrus like like Shah, like King of Kings?
Yeah, King of
Mm.
Kings. That was his
Yeah.
special
Yeah.
title.
And
But
King
in
of
English,
Classic.
you know.
Yeah, and I think in Sargon it was like master of the four quarters or something like that,
Oh
or
God, sorry.
Mhm.
it's something very archaic. 'Cause-
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, Alexander might be the first one who kind of like gets like great as an epithet, and it because he is like Magnos Alexandros. He is like
Mhm.
the great.
Yeah, but let's
yeah.
get back on point
The-
here. We're talking about inheritance. You want to
Yeah.
say that Alexander inherited less than Temujin?
No, I just want to say that Alexander did
Then done.
inherit.
Then done. No,
No, not
listen, Pete.
done.
No,
Not
Pete.
done.
No,
Like-
again. The
It's
question
not
is
that
who
Alexander-
inherited more?
Yeah, it's
Right?
not that Alexander didn't like do some cool shit and didn't work hard. He
Yes.
did, but Genghis Khan still just worked harder. Like it's
Yep.
Okay, I mean, I will agree. I will agree with you that Genghis Khan like
That's a
worked
big
hard.
point. That's a big point
I would
going to
say,
Mongolia.
I don't know. I would say it's a really minor point to be honest.
Oh,
Genghis Khan did not have the
Like-
mom that frickin' Alexander did. Olympia did everything to put him on that throne. She
Yeah.
killed people. She did
Yeah.
crazy conniving, and she was the only thing holding freaking Greece
Yeah.
together when he was gone on his little campaign. It's really
Alex-
her.
Alexander had
Olympias
to
is a
worry.
beast. She's so cool.
yeah.
Alexander had to worry about exile. Temujin was exiled.
Alexander was exiled too.
Yeah, it
Oh,
kind of
Was he
was.
fully exiled?
Well, yeah, he was. Like Georgie, you roll your eyes. He was exiled.
But he got
Like,
lucky. He got lucky with the
He was like he was banished with a few of his close friends, including like Ptolemy and like a couple of other his like closer companions, back to Illyria, like where his mama come from, and he's allowed back into the fold.
All of
later.
these
So,
things
yeah, he
make
gets exiled.
sense if any of us here was rating Alexander a 4. Does any of us here rate Alexander a 4
No.
and not a 5? No,
he
right?
No,
got
I'm just saying. I'm
No,
just
he's
saying.
still
That
five.
I'm just saying that
He's
Alexander,
5.
as a military,
But Chinggis is 5
leader,
plus.
as a military leader,
Mhm.
Alexander is better than Genghis Khan.
Look, what I'm saying is that if Alexander the Great's a 5-star general, then Genghis Khan is the commander of allied forces. Okay, it's like it's not that Alexander isn't at the top. It's just that like Genghis Khan is just that special.
He is
know?
so I
he's
hate
so he's so like the
okay,
the
I'll
army
school you a
formation
little bit.
the
No,
army
you're saying
formations
this.
the
No.
army
You
formations
can
that he does aren't innovative. They're
Okay.
just using the culture that's already around of the standard
But it doesn't.
method
This
of
is
monk
false.
But
government.
in that
This
case, it
is
doesn't have
false.
to be innovative. It just has to work.
If it ain't
Number
broke,
one, it
I
doesn't have
agree.
to
I
be
agree.
innovative, but
There's
he
still
is.
credit there.
Okay.
Come on, tell me an
Give me a sec.
innovation. Tell me a military innovation of Genghis Khan.
The feigned retreat on horseback.
That's not an innovation. The Scythians
no.
have been doing that. thousands of years earlier.
No.
Scythians been doing it for a while.
So Parthians
I'm
have
not
been
saying
doing
no,
that.
guys. Hold on, Pete. To say that he's not an innovator is ludicrous.
I said a military innovator.
Okay. Do you consider logistics a piece of military?
Yeah, if they're related to the military, then yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say that both Alexander and Chinggis did more for logistics than they did for tactics.
Okay,
Yeah,
then
for sure.
give me a
You are
give me a
insane,
military
like-
innovation of Chinggis.
Oh, okay. I can give you one. Now, granted, you could probably give credit this to Subutai too, but I mean, you could
Okay.
do the same with Alexander. I mean, generals, leaders, whatever. But
Yep.
Okay, the main thing that Subutai and Chinggis had is coordination at unheard of distances from each other from a radio age.
Yeah.
Like
I'm not even
no-
giving that.
no, like
Pete,
this
stop.
this isn't
You're
even,
embarrassing yourself.
no, this isn't even like like a subjective thing. Like objectively, before like modern warfare,
Yeah.
the largest like distance between coordinating armies was when the Mongols under Subutai were raiding Europe, and
Yeah.
they were commanding one army that was in Poland and another one that was
Yeah.
in actually I
That
think it was
is
near Bulgaria.
insane.
Like,
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they're using the same principles that the Persians had used.
No,
2000
stop.
but
stop.
you're talking,
You can't
talking about,
can't just take something like that and minimalize it like it's nothing.
I'm
because we're
saying it's-
talking
I'm
about,
saying
but
it's
we're talking
nothing
about
innovation.
tacticianing. But we're talking about tacticianing. Like,
Yeah.
like sure, you can say like innovation for like strategy is a different matter because
Mhm.
planning is planning. But in terms of tacticianing, the core
Yeah.
of that is like acting in the moment on the field, which
Mobility and
Yeah.
this communication is insane. He did a lot for military intelligence. He did a lot for military organization with the two-man system,
Yeah,
and
but
he
dude,
created
people had
No.
done this for centuries. None of it's new.
No. Okay, and he created a system of meritocracy that I just don't see anywhere else.
Also
Like,
not new. Alexander literally had contests
It
between
doesn't
his
need
men.
to be
I would
have
disagree.
merit.
I would
Like-
disagree with the meritocracy part. I think Persia can give Mongols the run for the money on that. But
Yeah,
Fair, but all of these things work together in a way. Like, I'll give you one example. He organized yearly hunts where he would say for 6 months no one's hunting, and we're leaving all the cheers, Craig. We're leaving all the wild game. No one's touching it. It's against the law for them to be touched. Then they take tens of thousands of riders and they practice formations hunting these animals.
Yep.
That is insane, and that is
that happened
unprecedented.
in England. No, that happened. What do you mean?
Peter,
English lords did that.
No. Tens of thousands of Mongol units circling around, practicing feint retreats, practicing encirclement. It's the scale, Pete. Like, do you remember that we talked about genocide?
I know that like the scale of the Mongols is impressive. I'll grant you that.
That's
But none of these ideas.
Do you remember
are
that we
new.
talked about genocide
give you-
with the Mongols in mind, actually? And we talked that
Yes,
going from a pyramid of 100 human skulls
Yeah,
to a
to the
pyramid of
scale.
10,000 human
Yeah.
skulls, even though it's the same pyramid with the same pieces to it, 10,000 human skulls is now an innovation. When
No,
it's
it's
that
not.
scale, it is. When it's on
It's
that level,
not.
it becomes unique. It becomes something different.
No.
I can actually add another innovation because I remember I was reading this somewhere and it was really interesting, but it was that the Mongols could very arguably be given credit for the first example of creeping barrage style artillery.
That's
Yeah,
good.
that is. I remember hearing that on another
As in
podcast.
field artillery to cover infantry advance.
Yes, because
Alexander is famously the first person to
but
do
specifically the creeping barrage style, because
Yeah.
like
Like,
artillery is such a
just in
broad,
front of the line.
because artillery is such a broad thing. Yes, throwing projectiles at the enemy, you can go all the way back to the Stone Age for that, but like specifically the functioning of like or it's a type of siege weapon. It's like stone throwers, I think. Is what they're
Okay,
called.
yeah.
Yeah.
Lithobola? Yeah.
Yeah, like those. They used basically like almost World War I style, like creeping barrage attacks against the Hungarians.
Yeah.
And I believe that was the first example of that in history.
Yeah,
So.
the point is you can't look at Chinggis and say
I
that
could
he's
give you
not an
that.
innovator. That's a ridiculous point.
Well, but the thing is, like, all right, Tiger's giving me 1 point where, I mean, if we're talking about firing in front of like an advancing line, then then that would sound like an innovate. Like Alexander is the first guy to use siege engines on the battlefield to push back an enemy. He's the first guy to do it to cover an advance and push the enemy back.
I don't
But
know
if we're
why
doing-
we
if
get
we're
stuck
talking
on the
about
innovation
creeping
argument.
barrage
You
as
keep
in front
you
of the
keep
advance, then yeah,
you
I'd give
keep
you- I'd
going
give
back to the
you
innovation
that.
argument. I don't see it as that impressive. I don't see it as that important. Honestly, like
Well,
to me, it's innovative enough to level up to a degree where you're commanding such a vast force on such a scale in so many different types of terrain. The ability to supply this force and keep them logistically fed
but to me, there are loads of people in history that have done that. And the thing that sets apart like the great generals from like the world class is like so Tiger famously, like, I don't think of Caesar as being a world-class general either, because I don't think of Caesar as being like an innovator. He was really good at doing like tried
why
and
is that
tested
so
tactics.
important for you to be a good general? I don't
No,
that.
no, it's not to be a good general. To be like one of the best of all time, I think you need to have had all of the elements of a good general and also like be so creative on a battlefield that you changed the way that warfare
So what
was
you're
fought
saying is you
for
have a checklist for the
centuries.
5-star category, right? I hope this makes sense.
A little bit, yeah.
All
Like
right,
kind
all
of a
right.
checklist, yeah. It's not
I
hard
have
fast,
something
but yeah.
similar. However, in some boxes, if I see that the scale and the accomplishment is so high, I'm gonna give it 2 checks.
See,
And
I
I'll
just
match.
wouldn't.
I
Wait.
would.
Because like I think like a counter example to kind of, because I agree with that. I think that sometimes like innovation in the face of scale, it shouldn't matter, because like, you know, take like America for example.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, I guess you can count the atomic bombs as innovations or whatever, but like, but you know, like aside from that, like a lot of what America did in terms of its weapons was basically just sheer numbers.
Yep.
I agree. I would say that America's not
And
too
it's
much
not
of
a
an
bad
innovative-
army.
And yet you could argue that, like, you know, like America and Soviet Union too, they also relied a lot on like
Yep.
sheer numbers as well. Like, so you know, the two
Great point.
countries that you can arguably give the best performance of the entire war weren't, with the exception of the atomic bombs, I guess, weren't really like innovative. It was like, you know,
Polished.
I agree with all that, but I think like when people talk about what makes a good general in particular,
Mm-hmm.
as in what separates an individual from another individual, it seems almost a little bit cheating in my opinion, seems a little bit cheaty to be like, well, this guy did it with bigger numbers, therefore he was better.
We get stuck on this. I want to introduce
but-
two
but-
interesting new things.
But just to
Unless
finish,
you will.
but just to finish the point, because that doesn't speak anything to the character or the intelligence of the individual. That just speaks to the resources that they have at their disposal. Like
Alexander
in-
had more resources. What are you talking about?
what?
That goes against your point. Alexander
What?
had more means to up the scale than Chinggis did.
for the time period, yeah, I'd actually no for the time period.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, like not inflation. What would you call it? Because like obviously, like during the time of Genghis Khan, there was like more people and stuff like that. But for the scale of the time, I would actually agree. Like,
Yeah. But
How?
I wanna
How?
expand and add one thing really quickly. Pete might contest it, but it's really no point in contesting it. Chinggis wins on this category. His
category?
legacy survives much longer. His reforms they carry over. There's a succession thing, and again, if Alexander lived longer, if he
Georgie.
had 20 more years. No, Pete, we're not. Let's not do that. But 20 more years, maybe he beats him. But sadly, he didn't get those 20 years. Chinggis got more. But I'm not going to get stuck on this point. I want to make a more contentious point.
Yeah, Alexander's
hate-
legacy lives on to today.
No, it doesn't.
well,
No.
so does Genghis Khan's. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I
Literally-
agree. I agree.
what, a tenth of the world is related to him. That's quite a legacy. Like,
But no, I want to say something more contentious. I don't like the great man theory. In fact, I really hate it.
yeah, same.
I think
And-
most people are like that now.
Yeah. There's been a huge change recently, which is good, thank God. But
Personally, I think there are periods of time where I think the great man's rule of history does have some validity to it.
and,
Well, the
I'm
problem-
about to make a case that the biggest exception to that rule is Chinggis, and please hear me out because I've studied this stuff. Mongolia provides the perfect lab experiment for this theory. Why? Because if you look at it, and Craig could probably give us some more context to this, but Mongolia seems to be this place stuck in time, technologically and relationship wise, politics wise. It's stuck in time. It's a bunch of these tribal people sponsored by China to fight each other.
Yes.
Like China's
exactly.
throwing toys at them just to keep them away, and they're fighting each other. They're not changing pretty much anything for centuries. I would wager, like, if you give the Mongols another couple of centuries without Temujin, they'd be literally doing the same. If you roll the tape back 500 years, they're still doing the exact same thing when Chinggis is around, with some little modifications. For example, they did have the stirrup, with the Huns not having the stirrup. That's a big game changer. But overall, they're stuck in a bubble where they're not connected that much with the outside world. That you rarely get that in history.
But
And
they're victims of their own success. Another reason why the steppe people stayed the way they were is because they didn't have to change. Anyone who came into their territory who weren't steppe people, whether it was the ancient Greeks, anybody, they ran away from them, took away their logistical capability and killed them, and then no one could conquer the steppe. It
was a stalemate. Like no one can conquer the steppe, but the steppe is not going anywhere. Their culture, their stuff, it's not expanding anywhere. And then one guy comes around and he has these insane ideas. He's turning the world upside down. He's destroying the hierarchy. He's going.
What are the insane ideas?
Mongolia
So-
being unified in the first place, for one.
Yeah,
You
that's
really don't
insane.
think
That,
that
might not
anyone
seem
else-
like an.
You
That,
don't
that,
think anyone else
There's
ever would
been
have
other
thought of that?
people, but
no,
Maybe-
it's not about unification. Hold on. It's nomadic people are very family orientated, extremely family orientated. They have a unit, and as far as their army goes, it's very it's not just hierarchical, it's what you call it, you don't put the best guy on top, you put the guy that has the most political clout.
Yeah.
Chinggis came in and he didn't give a fuck about who has the most clout. He said who's the most capable and who's the most loyal and who has the best skills on the battlefield. Even if he was my former enemy, even if he just shot me, put him on top.
Yeah.
And he created this environment where for the first time all of these people banded together and they went against everybody. Other tribes, China, Korea, Khwarezmians, mountain people, any terrain, any people, they go there, they adapt their culture and expand. Why I'm saying he's the exception to this theory is that you continue this world without a Chinggis and it's just going to stay the same thing. Technology is not going to change. It's the exact same thing. I cannot say the same thing about Alexander. I cannot look at Greece at that point in time and go, he changed a lot. He is very influential and he might be contested and argued that he's also an exception. But who's the bigger exception to that rule? Chinggis, because he goes to a world that's completely isolated, stuck in time, and makes it what we know it of today, and destroys all these other civilizations that so much stuff was happening to them.
Yeah, but
Alexander
he doesn't,
accelerated a process that was already there.
But that's the point. He doesn't.
What?
He doesn't destroy them. The Empire does. The Mongols as a people do. The Mongols as a people are fascinating. Genghis is cool as well. Don't get me wrong. Genghis is like a really, really interesting character. He's a great ruler and he's a great military tactician. But he doesn't destroy all the empires. Other people do it.
But it's the same with Alexander and his men, though. It's like
He's on the front lines. What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, he doesn't like is he even the guy in the Khwarezmian campaign? He's just the guy that orders it.
Yes.
He's not the guy who actually commands it. Isn't that
he's
Jebba?
there. He's there with all of his sons.
But isn't that Jebba who's in control of it?
No, there's all of the generals are being thrown at. He's not at Europe, but he lays the foundation and the reforms and the military stuff for
Lays the
Europe as
foundation.
well.
I agree. Yeah.
Mhm. But no. He's in there. He's in there.
he
Okay,
was in
so
most
like-
of his battles, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but like when we're talking about falls of empires, Khwarezmian, okay, we'll give him that. China's not him. Poland's
Well,
not him.
no,
Come on,
they
no,
conquered.
no,
They
no.
conquered.
Hungary's not him. Islam's
They
not him.
conquered. They did conquer the Jin dynasty and the
Capital.
Shishia dynasty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's not Genghis, is it? Isn't
Yeah,
that
for
I thought it
those
was
two, yes.
Kublai, isn't
For
it?
the
But
Jin,
that's
for
the
the
Song
Jin.
dynasty. So southern China was under the Song dynasty, and that
Yeah.
was taken by Kublai. But
Yeah.
the northern two dynasties were conquered by Chinggis. And then there was the
Specifically Chinggis Khan
Yes.
as the commander in the battles.
yeah.
Yes.
And then there's
Alright, fair enough,
there's
right.
the Karakate Empire, which was an
Mhm.
empire that basically covered modern day the stands, like
That's a
Central
big
Asia.
one. That's
Okay, right.
It's not just
You
a
know,
tribe.
It's not
Yeah.
a great comparison either to say this, but when Alexander was fighting the Persians, they just happened to have an advantage because of the way the Persian military structure was. The Persians' best units were Greek mercenaries
Mm,
because they were the only ones that could like stand up to the phalanxes, right? Whereas
Well, their
Genghis,
best infantry, yeah.
infantry, well, Persian infantry, whatever. But Chinggis, when he was going up against the Chinese, that is leagues difference, and you have
Leagues.
to actually like he had to adopt Chinese military engineers, and he had to like learn on the spot. And you're talking about a guy that had to jump like centuries ahead in his thinking to be able to use
this guy probably never saw a stone wall in his life before going
But-
to China.
Again,
They
Peter's going to say it's not
coordinated,
him,
planned floodings of cities to conquer them.
which is a terrible tactic, by the way. It's always the damn Chinese that do that stupid tactic.
Yeah.
I say this is not a
It-
great idea.
the jump is like from the prehistoric age jumping all the way to the modern age. The quickness, the speed of their mobility and their adaptation is insane.
Well, their logistics is what won them the wars. That's it.
Like,
It's the logistics.
And discipline.
People have got such a. It goes back to my classic idea of horseshoe theory, of history. Like for centuries, there's been a really westernized view, particularly of Alexander and how amazing he was, and people have kissed his ass for centuries as being like, just the greatest of the greats, completely infallible, da 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 da.
Yeah.
And recently, like at least in popular opinion, it sort of like swings the other way, to try and balance it out a bit. And in doing so, it's missed so much like nuance. It just completely like it just has this idea of just like the Persians were weak. The Persians were
None of us is saying this.
No.
Okay, but that's the thing though. We're not like trying to say that Alexander's bad. Like I would still say Alexander's definitely a 5 out of 5. It's just that Genghis Khan is the 6 out of 5. It's just
no. Okay,
he is. He's in a different league.
Okay, but people nonetheless. Sorry, and this isn't. Sorry, those two particular points were not actually targeted like at either of you two in particular. That was just about like a general concept of like
leaving the
how
scope
Alexander...
of the argument. Unbelievable.
I mean,
but like even the idea of like Alexander not being like an innovator, or Alexander being like
nobody
really good,
is saying
but
this.
really okay.
This is
but
a straw man.
Even the idea of Alexander being like 5-star but not being world class is in itself revisionist of an idea.
I'm with Peter on that. Like,
which is like it's just completely unfounded and easily disproved. Like if we wanted to reach a compromise, the compromise would be that Genghis Khan and Alexander were both worldies. That would be the compromise.
Yeah, I would agree. It's just that Genghis Khan was still higher. It's just like
exactly. No,
it's not.
We have to make a top.
It's like again. It's like
there's so much that
Messi and Ronaldo are I would say in the same league.
So it's like
that's not how I see Chinggis and Alexander.
See, it's like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, right? It's like they're both these like legendary bands that like change music forever. They're very popular and they're all like 5 out of 5. Yeah, no one is going to deny that those two change everything. But at the same time, Rolling Stones versus the Beatles, no. Like the Beatles were just like leagues ahead of like innovation and everything like that in terms of what they contributed to music. But they're both still,
innovation's important.
But they're still both 5 out of 5. That was my point. It's like it's just that like you can be in the top tier category. You can be on Mount Olympus, but still be Hermes versus Zeus. It's like it's like
I know. It's like my boy reduced to Hermes.
We can solve this easily.
This is awesome, dude.
Genghis and Alexander are 5s, but Napoleon is a 6.
Napoleon can fuck off.
No. Actually, yeah, I would say that like Napoleon is up there with Chinggis. I think that
you like innovation, Peter.
Yeah,
I think like if I had to give historical figures like a legendary 6 out of 5, or at least the top, the top of the 5s, the 5.9 or whatever, if you will.
Yeah,
I would say that Genghis Khan and Napoleon are easily the.
What's interesting?
Napoleon.
My 3 is
Napoleon isn't
Chinggis,
close to
Napoleon,
Alexander, and Napoleon isn't close to Genghis. Both of them
Napoleon has a better record.
Like at the end of the like Napoleon is amazing on a battlefield, incredible on a battlefield, like really like a military prodigy. But like on a grand strategic level, the guy is a moron, like literally borderline, like almost incompetent. Ideas of like really like blockading the entirety of Europe. You thought this would be a good idea and that this wouldn't like funnel people into like the UK's hand. Invading Spain.
We're judging them as commanders, not leaders.
Also,
I
well,
think
you
this is
have
all
to
part-
take that into consideration, though.
But this is
Like,
all part of being
I
a
don't
military
consider
command.
Alexander a great ruler, and I don't consider Chinggis a great ruler.
But like as a military commander, like the grand strategies of like invading Spain was a stupid decision. Pulling troops away from Spain to try and funnel them into a ridiculous Russian campaign was a stupid decision. Like Napoleon is amazing on the battlefield. He's terrible on a grand campaign side. Like,
Okay,
Reed,
okay,
would
you
you-
know
oh,
what?
wait,
You know
wait,
what?
if you're
You're
gonna
right.
play
Genghis
this
is better
stupid
than
game-
Napoleon. Yeah,
If you're gonna play
Genghis
this
is
game,
better than Napoleon.
yeah, I'll give you that.
if you're gonna play this game, though, I can say going to India is a stupid move. Consolidate your empire first. On a grand scheme of things, even if
Yeah,
he does
did
die
have it
early,
consolidated. It was
What?
consolidated. It was consolidated. He had a clear air. He
you
had
cannot say that and then it fragments so quickly. You cannot have both.
you really can. Like he had an undisputable clear heir, which was his son.
Mhm.
It's not his fault that other generals then betrayed him. Like it should have been
But
really
it
Why?
is his fault that he left the satrapy system in place that gave regional rulers and generals enough autonomy to fragment the empire in the
Yep.
first place.
You
No,
can
Because he was
consolidate
focusing-
that shit
no,
as
he
no,
well.
was
no,
fo-
no,
he
no,
was
'cause
choosing
no,
to focus on the campaign at
no,
hand
but-
rather than
but-
total consolidation.
but it wasn't even but it wasn't the satrapies that screwed him. Antipater screws him.
But
Like,
he
and
gave,
t-
And
but
Napoleon's
remember,
generals
he
screw
put
him.
his generals in charge of those satrapies, though.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Most
but
of
it's,
them anyway.
but it's not all of like it's almost literally just Antipater is the guy who screws Alexander. Like he's the guy who wipes out Alexander's family and eradicates it. Like most
Because
Perdiccas
he
is the
got
guy,
there first.
but like Perdiccas is the guy who's appointed as being Alexander's regent, and most of Alexander's generals are really chill with the idea of like, oh yeah, Perdiccas is regent, Alexander's son obviously will be the next Macedonian king. It's a no-brainer. It's painfully obvious that's the solution. Antipater is just an amazingly cunning, like Machiavellian character, and literally just eradicates Alexander's entire family. That's not Alexander's fault. Like Antipater had been there for like 50 years. He had been like in Macedonia as like a high noble ruler. Like he'd been under Philip. He had been known to Alexander. He should have been
Just
well
so we're
trusted.
clear,
He's
how
just
do
a-
you rate Alexander as a leader? Just so we see where you stand. And be careful, because this is going to make the difference between being a total biased fanboy, Venice style, and someone who actually knows his shit and is objective.
So bear in mind, I know more about Alexander.
Oh, you
1
can
to
know your
5.
shit, but still be blind to your loyalty anyway.
I
mean, that
agree
happens
with
all the
that.
time,
I do
like-
agree. I
Yeah.
mean, well, all right. What do you mean by a good leader?
1 to 5, same rules everybody gets. Augustus
Okay.
is a 5, Caligula is a 1. Where does
Augustus-
Alexander go?
Augustus is a 5. Alexander is a 4.
Bullshit.
Maybe when he's
Bull-
sober.
Bye.
No, Alexander's easily.
No,
a
you're
4.
done. You're done.
Okay, all
You
right.
can
all right,
argue
all right,
3.
all right.
You can
Okay,
argue
well,
3.
well, real quick, just so that I know what you're arguing. Tell me some of the good things that Alexander did.
Okay. The wait, in terms of leadership or command?
Leadership
Okay.
as an administrator. As a leader.
Alexandria is one of the best located cities you can possibly make, and he had a lot to do in actually founding that city. He knew what medicine well, and he basically picked a spot that had a certain wind to it that's going to prevent malaria and stuff like that sprawling up. It's a perfect location for a trade hub. He's good with managing finances and basically giving resources to the places in the hands of the people who could use them well. So all of these Alexandrias that he founded, not just Alexandria, the big one, but he's a good expansionist ruler who creates cities well.
This all
he-
sounds really good. Tell me how he's not a 4.
I think this gets you to 3. Besides
make
what
him
I
a
just
4?
explained, he doesn't have the time. He doesn't put in the time. He doesn't do the homework. He doesn't do the legwork
To do
to
what?
lead.
To do what?
to be an administrator.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well,
What does
basically,
being an administrator mean? Because
passing
reforms.
reforms.
Alexander literally spent like months picking individual satraps and assigning them based off personalities,
Using a
getting rid
system
of.
that was already there that he didn't create.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. Yeah, that's
But
really good.
I can't
That's
give him
really
that much
good
credit for
ruling.
that.
Okay, but like the
It's-
guy was like almost micromanaging the empire. Like he took like almost painful levels of detail about who was in control of what area, using the Persian system for sure. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, he was like really entrenched and really like it was what he thought was going to be his legacy. Like he took massive interest in it. Like even when he was in like Babylon, he was
Yeah.
passing reforms back to the Greek city-states about what the kind of stuff that they should be doing, about
Mhm.
letting exiles back in,
All right.
about letting political opponents who've been exiled back into the city so that they
All
should
right.
function
This
as proper
sounds
democracies. Like
convincing.
Alexander was doing this regularly.
It's difficult for me to give a 4 to any leader that's their empire after their death for whatever reasons fragments the way his does. It just doesn't feel
What
earned.
does Chinggis get?
It's really close.
Oh,
No, I'm at the same point with Alexander and Chinggis because like they both are between a 3 and a 4. They're not quite a 3 and they're not quite a 4, but Chinggis' empire doesn't fall apart after his death. He actually put some really good principles in there.
it falls
that-
apart kind of quickly after his death.
Well,
No.
Not
it was
not
it was,
immediately. There's like one generation.
No, like
No.
Kublai Khan was his grandson. That's more than
Yeah.
one generation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
but
got multiple Khans.
but yeah, exactly. There are multiple Khans.
And I want to remind you
Well,
that he
that's
didn't
because of
rely
the-
on the satrapy system of Persia. The system he made for the inheritance was his.
But also the multiple Khans thing is kind of misleading because the whole point is that you have like Khans at one level, but then you have the universal Khan, which was passed down as a title.
Okay, but
The fact that no,
It's
listen
sim-
to this. The fact that there was a succession.
similar to the idea of being a king of kings. Like the
Yeah.
idea of being a king of kings.
Exactly,
You
and
have-
exactly. That's why I'm saying that there's multiple Khans isn't a point against him, because
Yeah.
the reason why that it ended up permanently splitting around 100 years later is not because that it like, oh, the great Khan died and they just divided it amongst the 4 kids or generals or whatever. It was more that, hey, should we appoint the next great Khan? And then they did.
Well, we'll just keep it with like multiple Khans. We won't have the great Khan yet.
Yeah, like that's basically how
Yeah,
it split. So
okay.
it wasn't as much of like a fragment so much as like
Okay, fair. Okay, that's a good
bureaucracy.
point.
Yeah.
Alright.
The Alexander fracture is more vicious and quicker, much quicker.
And it's not his fault.
And is it Chinggis' fault that Kublai Khan decides to?
No. I would say it's not his fault.
Well,
And it's
but
not
I
Chinggis'
would say
either.
that
You're
I
saying
would
nothing
say
with that.
he had now. Granted, maybe you could assume that like part of it is like Alexander probably didn't know he was going to die at 32, but like it seemed like that. Unlike Chinggis, Alexander did not have too much foresight past. Gotta conquer the known world. Gotta conquer the known world. Gotta conquer the known world.
Like he had a son. He married. He had a son. Who
No,
was being
yeah,
raised-
like sure, he had
Sure.
that, but that almost, but that wasn't like the force, like the forefront of his thinking most of the time. It was
Aren't
more like
always
yeah,
generals on his deathbed asking him who should lead us, and he just says the strongest. Is that a myth or is
It's
it
kind
fact?
of a myth. No one knows.
No
Okay.
one really knows. No one
Okay.
really knows.
Well, that's also
He
seems
should
like
have done
very
a better
last-minute
job,
decision.
though.
Yeah.
He
No,
should have
no,
done a
no.
better job with the
No,
will.
no.
He was
No,
too
no, no.
drunk.
He it's not that he should have done a better. It's not that he should have done a better job. Like Macedonian law was incredibly clear. Alexander's son was going to be his heir. Like Alexander had a son
That's
when
stupid.
he was.
How old is the son?
He's like 6 or something when
Stupid.
Alexander died.
That's unrealistic.
Okay.
Alexander didn't
Okay,
plan on
but-
dying at 31.
I was gonna say he doesn't know this, and like
Are you fucking
Okay,
kidding me? The
but-
guy's riddled with injuries. How
Okay,
could he
but
not
the-
have a plan B?
Okay, but okay,
he had
he did
has
have a
Vigo,
plan
though.
B.
That's
The-
why he didn't.
The
that's why
plan
he
the
didn't.
plan B was making Perdiccas regent. That was plan
So
B.
why didn't he make sure that happened? talked
He
with
did.
every one of his generals and
He
said,
did.
"Hey, we all agree it's Perdiccas, right?"
Yeah, he literally did. On his deathbed, he
Not a
gives
good, not a
You
not good
know,
enough job.
you know,
he gives his ring, the mark of succession. He gives it to Perdiccas as like,
Okay.
look after this. You're
Yeah.
the regent. Look after it.
you know who didn't
And then-
wait? You know who didn't wait until his deathbed to have a system in place?
Is it
Genghis Khan.
Chinggis? No.
And
And
it's
plus,
not
like
just
there's so much
it's-
more that like people don't even consider.
Yeah.
Like when I say building up from scratch, I mean building up from scratch. Because one of the
How-
things I think, well, one of the things I think that people really ignore that I think is very important for administration is communication.
Oh, yeah.
And especially when you have an area as diverse as the areas that Genghis Khan conquered. Because like, you know, with Persia, it's like, okay, Greek was already kind of like a lingua franca of the area at the time. He could get
Oh,
away
yeah.
with Greek and
Good
then
point.
maybe add Persian in there. That's like 2 languages, right?
Hmm.
Genghis Khan had to deal with way more than 2 languages.
Yeah. And religions.
And at the time, the Mongols did not have their own writing system. So Genghis Khan,
Oh.
so Genghis Khan actually was smart enough to go, hey, we're going
Yeah.
to need a writing system. So he commissioned the people to come up with a whole new writing system for administrating the empire.
For you
like
to be a
Greek-
fan of innovation and to just
Okay,
disregard
but-
what
okay.
His Majesty just said.
Yeah, but Greek isn't a lingua franca at the time, particularly not against Persia. The reason that it becomes a lingua franca is because of Alexander. Like Alexander
But
has
it's still even okay. Let's say it's not a lingua franca. It is still an already established language
Yeah.
and writing system that, without a doubt,
No.
many educated people in Persia would at least know about or
Okay.
be able to quickly adapt to.
Okay, I will
Genghis
give you,
Khan again made his from scratch.
I will give you the idea that yes, educated Persians probably would have at least had some understanding of Greek. But like the amount of times where Alexander was desperately looking for literally translators and interpreters, because again, like Persia itself didn't have necessarily a unified language. People are speaking different languages in Sogdiana as they
Yes.
are speaking in like Ionia. And
You are
in
forgetting
Syria.
the scale again. No one's saying he's bad and he didn't struggle with these things. It's like you look at the Mongol Empire, you're talking about more languages, more religions,
Okay,
more,
okay, Okay,
more.
but you're talking about the Persian Empire. You're talking
I'm
literally
talking about Greek,
okay,
like
but you're talking-
the cradle of civilization.
Okay, but you're literally talking about 40.
Institutions.
You're talking about 40% of the world population at the time. Just over 40% of the world population at the time.
Greece
is
was
what I-
more capable of establishing a legal code than
No,
Mongolia
I'm not.
did.
No, I'm not talking about Greece. I'm talking about like Alexander's like administrative reforms in Persia, like responding to Tiger's point about like lingua franca, which is a fair point because like yeah, Persian nobility definitely did have like a knowledge of.
It's a fair point. Aristotle is a
Greek,
fair point,
but-
and all these fair points stack to paint a picture that the distance traveled from as an underdog story from point A to point B between Alexander and Chinggis, and no one's saying that Alexander didn't travel any distances. We're just saying that the distance that Alexander traveled from point A to point B cannot compare with Chinggis. Like he had to come up with all of this stuff on his own.
Craig,
But
where's
also-
Douglas MacArthur fit into this? Where's he on the ratings? Is he
Oh my
is he
God.
is
Well,
he an
I-
Alexander?
If you gave the freaking the Mongolian Empire to Douglas MacArthur, he would have pretty much starved half of them before the rest were taken down by the Japanese somehow. I don't even know how they'd get over there, but it would happen.
I would
Right.
also like to add real quick. I don't know how reliable this is because I'm not really doing that deep of a dive into it, but
Yeah.
at least like a basic Google search, what I'm seeing is that under the Mongol Empire, at one point there was around 31% of the world's population
Mhm.
as a part of it, which so
Yeah.
that's pretty comparable.
Yeah. Craig, after all of this banter for like an hour, tell us how you stand, whether you knew a lot about this before or not. I'm very curious as an outside viewer.
I'm
what
gonna
do you
be right
think?
back real quick.
Should I wait
this
for him
is-
to come back?
No, this is the banner thing. We don't need to edit
Okay,
this.
yeah.
I can just like
I-
come and go. Yeah.
Magic. I'm gonna actually replace Peter with an anime girl. Just for fun.
Yeah.
Nice. And the question at hand is Is Chinggis on the theoretical solo scale of 6?
You mean
As
that
a
there's
commander.
no one else that can compete with him?
Yeah.
No,
Or is
no. There's there is
between
definitely.
Alexander and like if you had to put one of them as a 6, or
See, that's the thing. I would put them both, but if you're asking me if one is against the other, then someone has to be chosen and win.
yeah, you need a number 1.
And it's Genghis.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he's got he benefits from so much. Like for the Macedonians, like yeah, sure, they have a lot of innovations. They're a powerhouse. They're able to tussle with the Persians and everything, but the accomplishments of the Mongolian Empire,
Yeah.
it's apples and oranges in a lot of ways, but I would have to give it to Genghis still.
I value numbers and diversity of competition very highly. Maybe the same way Peter values innovation very highly. That's why in my book, Napoleon he loses some points, but he gets a lot of points based on how difficult that age was in warfare and
Yeah.
how many different opponents he faced.
Yeah, well, it's like if you put a modern general or a World War II general against these guys, how are you going to, put the scales up? Because a World War II general is dealing with potentially millions of people. Like Genghis couldn't even fathom the numbers, so it's a different scale. But when it comes to Alexander and Genghis, administrative wise, they're playing kind of in the same ballpark. But Genghis has a shit. He has more.
Exactly. I agree with that. And time shouldn't be that much of a factor here because I believe the ancient world and levels of sophistication beats the medieval world most of the time. Like
the thing that Chinggis has, like if I had to pick something that I just feel outdoes Alexander, and it's not that Alexander was bad at this by no means. Logistics.
Logistics, yeah.
Genghis,
and Alexander is actually a master of logistics as well, but
they're both. But Genghis,
there's a master and there's like this demigod.
Like TigerStar has been saying, just the communication, their little Pony Express here. It's like no one had that kind of capability. It's
absolutely insane.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be true. I was reading this stuff and studying it, and it really shouldn't be true. Both of them shouldn't have survived as many wounds as battles as they were in.
Well,
but
I'm sorry,
this is the more unbelievable story to me.
And Peter kind of like got into like the can of worms that I opened. I wasn't belittling like the Persian Empire. Like the Persian Empire had an enormous amount of different groups of people that had different military capabilities, and they were formidable. And they had mounted horse archers, just like Genghis would have had. They had all sorts of different groups of people. But if you want to compare them to the Qin, like the Chinese were next level in just about everything, and they just screwed up because of their corruption and greed. If they were on their game, they probably would have took the Mongols out.
And maybe if Persia was on their game, they could have taken them out.
Well, yes, definitely.
Both Alexander and Chinggis were really good at snowballing their advantage, right? Victory after victory, morale, sack this city, take that city.
And they use their enemies against them. They learn from their own enemies. Like Alexander was really, it screwed him being cosmopolitan. Like his Macedonian companions hated him in the end because of how he kind of went lovingly alongside the Persian lines and dressed like them. And Genghis
Kublai as well.
Yeah, they adopted the necessities to be able to continue the legacy, and
they didn't have a choice.
Yeah,
I don't know so much about Alexander not having a choice, but Kublai, he saw the writing on the wall. He knew that I'm either going to hold on to a falling empire that was inevitably, I'm just going to hold a piece of it, or I can try to found a dynasty over all of China and do some stuff.
I'm not good when it comes to ancient. When it comes to ancient China, I know very little. It's like for me, it's Ming above, and I know pretty much everything. But like Sun Tzu, I would assume is somebody that would equally fall into the category as like one of the guys that at least wrote down military strategy and innovated a lot. So maybe he gets a 5-star spot too. I don't know.
I wish the Communist Party didn't burn as much as they did and destroy as much amazing stuff. That this is one of the two unforgivable things looking at history is how the Spanish destroyed so much writing of the Maya and the Aztecs. With the Maya because it featured the number 0 or whatever they did it for, and the Communist Party, sorry for sponsors, for destroying so many monuments and so many writings, so many stories probably we'll never get to see because of that.
Burning stuff like that in general is always such a damn shame. It ruins everything.
It is.
Yeah. So that's why we're giving Julius Caesar a 7. Then we all agreed.
7 out of 10, maybe.
Like, why be innovative and win things when you can just make shit up?
Yeah,
Write the books.
that works.
But you don't understand. I was in a siege within a siege once. That's cool, right?
A siege within a siege within a siege within a siege.
Yeah, Incept Siege, yeah. It's great.
That's great.
Your Majesty, you want to throw in something real quick for 15 minutes just to make the episode a little bit more varied? Something that
Please
you're
not
pretty
Alexander.
passionate about?
Not Genghis.
Yeah.
What, like hot takes or something?
Anything you got that you want to talk with us about? I'd love to hear what you got.
Well, you seem to be very shocked about how I did not like EU4.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah. Yeah, tell me more about that.
So I'm kind of weird. When I say like I'm not much of a gamer,
Okay.
I have kind of, especially recently, kind of come to this thing when it comes to games where just because it's more complicated does not mean it's better.
Agreed.
Because it's like the purpose of the game is to like entertain, and at least for me personally, because I know there are some people that are like naturally competitive with games and they kind of view it more as like a sport type thing, which fair enough.
Yeah.
But I see games as like I want to turn my brain off and just have a little fun to relax and recover and stuff like that. And with EU4, it was just at a level where it felt like I was doing more work than was fun. And I just didn't want to play it anymore.
Yeah.
And
I can get that.
Yeah.
Totally.
And Hearts of Iron 4 was like, for the longest time, Hearts of Iron 4 was like the borderline. That was like the max I was willing to do. But with some of the more recent updates, it's like, hey, now you've got to worry about administering your holds. And hey, now we've got a supply train system. And hey, now we've got a spy network. It's like, nope, stop. I just wanted to move the map around. I didn't want to think when I was doing it. And
totally understandable. Totally understandable. And there's people like me who probably look at EU4 and they're like, it's not complicated enough. Yeah, and it's boring, and I'm just
it's not even
put enough hours, but I totally get you.
Yeah, because like it's not even like, yes, I'm sure like if I spent the time I could totally figure it out. It's not the issue of figuring it out. It's like for example, I was relatively good at like, like algebra in like high school. Like I could do the formulas, but that didn't mean I loved math. I hated it. Like I just kept doing it. It's just, you could be good at something. It's like, hey, did you mowing the lawn isn't very hard. Just do it. It's not that it's hard. I just don't want to do it. It's like,
I get you completely.
I completely agree with TigerStar. Like there is a Civ game which was on console called Civ Rev, Civilizations.
I loved Civ Rev.
Civ Rev was so good. It had like literally like there were like 4 or 5 resources which you had to manage. It's just like there's growth, money, science, production. I think that's it actually. And then you just build units and it's like, great. I love this. I love the sort of like game design.
Civ
I love how simple it is.
Good.
It's so good. And then I like tried doing like Civ 5 or Civ 6 on Steam, and it's just like, oh, I don't give a shit about like the pollution of my city and like the various cultures that are coming into the city. I really don't care about this stuff. I really like the simplicity that Civ Rev had. That was perfect for me. The other Civ games just got way too like micromanagey. I had to think too much. I completely get where TigerStar's coming from. I
have to add the asterisk that that's for you, and like
of course,
maybe you sound maybe I'm about to me you sound really dumb making that statement, because I think as they move forward they dumbed it down. I think Civ 4 is harder than Civ 6, let's say, but
Civ Rev is different.
I might also sound very dumb by saying that I feel intimidated by those city builder games, whether they be set in Rome or modern times. Like,
Yeah.
I've dabbled with them. I see why people love them. They have a very dedicated community. And I'm actually not going to say that it's hard. I just, there's things that click with me and not. And yet I'm still slightly surprised you're not a fan of U4, simply because of its maps. And I'm gonna give an example. I've struggled. I had this conversation with my friends that they don't understand this, but love U4, don't click with CK2. I haven't really dived deep into CK3, but I tried CK2 many times, just don't vibe with it. But you know what I do like? The maps. And I have it installed, and sometimes I open just looking at the maps. I'm not playing. I don't know how to play, but I'm just looking at the maps and enjoying what they have. And DLCs add new stuff to the maps, new provinces and regions. And that's why I'm still just a little bit surprised, because even sometimes for research purposes, I boot it up and I go like, I look at the cultures, religion, the maps there are fantastic.
Yeah, they could use some work.
Oh, tell me how.
Well, I mean, I don't have any specifics offhand, but like, I can't tell you how many times, like when I've made a video and it like, what's the starting year in EU4? It's like 1440 something, or what is it?
1444.
Yeah. I can tell you how many single times I've made like a time lapse where if it goes past 1444, inevitably there's a comment they're like, this doesn't look like the 1444 map. It's like, yes, it's because the maps and the games had to simplify a few things and got some things wrong. At least for someone like me, it's easier for someone like me to notice certain things instantly and just be
what bothers you the most?
See, I don't remember. I haven't looked at the map in forever. Like, I don't play it. It's like
I got you.
You know, so I can't like think of any offhand, but like I know that like I've noticed like that wasn't there yet. That wasn't that big yet.
Yeah.
Oh, the border guard. No. Like
the fake unity in places like France. Like, I get it. They added 6 vassals. They've done things to improve those elements, but still.
Sure. Or like
so many places are more fractured.
Or even like I haven't really played it, although I did buy it. The most recent Crusader Kings.
Okay.
When I looked at the map, it was really neat that they added like a whole bunch of like playable areas in like Africa, for example. But I noticed that the nation / ethnic groups that they're using in Africa aren't from that time period. It's more like centuries later. So you know. But you know, it's like 99% of the people playing the game aren't gonna really notice or care.
Yeah. This is
but you know, if
for the hardcore ones.
But if you look at these things all the time, it just kind of like, you know, just stands out at this point. And
Interesting.
It's like I don't blame, like I don't think like, you know, oh, shame on you game developers for not getting a 100% perfectly historically accurate. Like like, I'm not gonna blame them for that, but like, you know, it's
and you got to give them props for constantly getting better. Like they are genuinely getting better with every game, with every DLC, and it's not an easy job.
And sometimes the inaccuracies are necessary for the function of the game. Because like when I made my video, like half jokingly making fun of like the Axis and Allies board game map, like part of the reason why the map is so ugly as it looks is like most of the physical token game pieces are going to be in Europe, and so of course like Europe and like Western North Africa, of course those areas are going to look like bigger blobs than like the outer line areas. Like it makes sense for the function of the board game, even though it looks ugly. So like I'm not going to like totally blame them for that, but
totally practicality comes
very
into
big
play.
they could probably try a little.
I actually really love that video. I think you should keep doing that series. And I do think that just doing the starting map of 1444 could make for a good video like that.
Honestly, yeah. I do love pissing people off with like, EU4 isn't as amazing as people say it is. No, I don't play it, but that's beside the point. Like
You'll get a flame one. There we go.
That's like that, but that's a bit like I don't really like this franchise. Have you watched it? No, but I am not a fan.
yeah, it is, but I don't care.
Nice. Nice. Man. Right. So anything else we want to get into? Or we just gotta hear and not mention Venice at all, even though it was not.
Because the
Built by
argument
the
was
Romans.
destroyed twice with the same argument. We don't need to do it again.
I'm gonna say, I mean, with any luck, we'll always be able to have Tiger on another time to get into other things
Definitely.
beforehand.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun, even though it was mostly a comparison between Chinggis and Alexander.
Yeah, I
That
guess
is
the
a
title-
I'm
nice
sorry
comparison
that
to
we got
make.
stuck in that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
the
But
title
they
of
are the
this is already-
contenders.
The
They
title
are
is
the
Genghis
contenders.
versus
Nonsense. Let's give Dan Carlin a run for his money and go another 5 hours. Yeah.
Let's go.
Oh my god.
New hardcore history dropped. It's 7 days long. Oh, well, that's shorter than usual.
Oh, just sound.
What are your thoughts on Dan Carlin?
I enjoy hardcore history. I like his way of storytelling. I think like
Yeah.
Did you hear that, Pete?
Yeah, I
Did you hear
have.
that?
well, like here's the thing. Like I understand criticisms against him, but like I have several teachers in my family. And I think like one of the things that's kind of been emphasized when having teachers in your family is like sometimes you got to be a little, to call back, a little bit strategic with how you teach someone. And so like, not everyone is going to be like, a well-versed Rhodes Scholar, like,
Yeah.
some people learn through different ways. Some people respond better to different styles of teaching.
Yeah, legit.
And I think just simply acknowledging like, hey, you know what? I'm not a scholar, but history somewhat interests me and I would like to casually learn more about it. I think Dan Carlin is perfectly fine for that.
I think we need people like him, and I think he adds more than he takes.
It's
got
good
nothing-
for, it's like, it's good storytelling. It's like,
I've got nothing against Dan Carlin in that particular category. I'm just saying it's not my cup of tea.
Fuck you, I hate all of you.
that's
all I
fair
said.
That's
enough.
fine.
Yeah.
I got thrashed by a certain person at in Kings and Generals who really doesn't like him, I guess. But yeah,
No, I think I
he's
know
entertaining.
I think I know exactly what happened. Peter put on the first episode, and it was, "Is Alexander the Great like Hitler?" And he's like, "No, I'm done." And then he just stopped listening. Because that was the first episode, if I recall. It was.
Oh, I haven't even seen it. It was the Roman stuff that lost me. But
Yeah, it was
Death Throes of the Republic. I think I was. Yeah.
It was actually kind of interesting, but it was kind of this concept of like, hey, have you ever noticed that like the older the historical figure is, the easier it is to ignore the horrible atrocities they did and just say they were awesome and not think about it? And it's like, because like, Alexander the Great genocided whole population groups. So like, if an Alexander type figure existed today, he would be like, up there with like Hitler and Stalin and Mao as one of the worst of the worst. But because it's such a long time ago, no one alive today has any leftover scars from it. We're just like, wow, that's badass. Yeah. Alexander's the best. Am I right? And it's like, well,
Yay, Hellenization.
yeah.
it's really good. But yeah, he did also do some atrocities. Yeah. No one would deny that.
Well, Cletus wouldn't deny it.
I mean, who didn't? Come on.
I guess the real evil person was alcohol.
Oh yeah.
I'll have no bad words said about alcohol. I know I'll die on this hill. Like, yeah,
I mean,
slag off
for
Alexander.
Well, perhaps Tigerstar could do just one last plug-in, just to let us know what the audience might want to see in the future from your content.
Well, if I have social media, it'll be emperortigerstar, no matter where it's at. I mentioned on, I guess I'll say last episode, magical editing. Last episode, I mentioned about the possibility of, well, not possibility, an ongoing North America project, focusing on making sure all those indigenous countries are actually mapped in there. It's a lot more complicated than it looks. And that's why it's taking so long. But hopefully I'll get there someday.
Yeah, I mean, there's only a handful of tribes, I'm pretty sure, in North America.
It's just the Sioux, really, isn't it? Isn't it just you can just like write over just like all of North America, just be like Sioux, Vega, down here.
See that's
exactly.
No, that's one of the
wasting
other
your
things
time.
Too. No, that's one of the other things too, because like and like I shouldn't have even have said Sioux. I've been trying to be better about this. It's one of those things where like you learn like, oh, what? That's not actually their name. That's like you know, weird things like that. Because like apparently, I'm not saying that like Sioux is like, you know, the worst slur on the planet, but there are a lot of Lakota and Dakota people who do not like that term because it comes from, I think it was the Cheyenne. It was one of their enemy tribes, but it was like the Sioux was like the Cheyenne word for like snake eater.
Right.
Which was considered like a big insult. And so basically the French came along, they're like, hey, who are those guys in the teepees up there? Oh, you mean the Sioux over there? Sioux. Okay, let's write that down. And then it just kind of stuck that way.
Oh, okay.
You know what? If you got a problem with that name, then you just need to use the term that the French used for the Native Americans, les sauvages, the savages. There you go. It's much more politically correct.
Yeah. So, but you know, it's one of those things where like, you know, half the Lakota and Dakota don't care. They're like, oh, what's done is done. But then the other half are like, they don't like it at all. You're never going to have a correct answer other than just the name of the tribe. It's like Lakota, Dakota, or the name of like the group together. It was like the Council of the Seven Fires, which like in their name was like it was like,
that sounds sick.
It does, yeah.
Dude, the Sioux are like the Mongols of North America. If they would have gotten horses at an earlier time, it would have been absolute. They could have formed their own. Like they're on the plains. They were excellent at horseback. You know.
And then Alexander would have been third.
But the Council of the Seven Fires, like in their language, it's called like, it's like Okedi Sakowin or something like Okedi Sakowin or something like that. But you know, or like the Iroquois are called the Haudenosaunee. Yeah, it's
actually they got many names because I work for a native reserve and they're Mohawk, so it's the Ongwe would be a term they'll use for themselves. The Ganyigahaga, the Haudenosaunee, or like more the New York Mohawks, they'll call themselves that. They don't like Iroquois, you know, it's a confederacy, but they wouldn't call themselves Iroquois, and they hate that. Well, the ones that I work with hate that.
Yeah, because I thought that like Haudenosaunee was just the name of like the confederacy, like that would, and then like Iroquois was just like the French it's always the French.
Yeah, the French. Yeah,
because while they weren't French, it's like they were nice enough to at least give them sometimes give them a decent, no, they were at least nice enough to try to give them a name. But I had to take a few steps back there and think about that.
Yeah,
but
it was very political.
I definitely, this gave me an idea. We have to do this one day. But which nation or language affected the world and other languages the most? You can make a case for French, for Greek, for Latin, and for English. Maybe others as well. But that's a close battle.
I would just say Latin simply because we decided to use it not only for like for a lot of religions and like the church, but like the scientific community. Like, well, once you use Latin to officially coin phrases of church, governance, medicine, like that's like a
law.
That's basically like a permanently cemented legacy until Western civilization gets destroyed.
Yeah,
you know.
But you could also, like, a good debater could win with French, English, or
which wouldn't exist without Latin. And English wouldn't exist without French or Latin either, or at least not in the same form.
Surprised we're not hearing like Mandarin, Cantonese here. I mean,
I was gonna say
Mandarin only became of prominence
I know.
once the PRC had to pick one. They had to pick one, and they chose Mandarin. And
But
now
surely
it's-
some of the Indian languages have got to be in with the shout.
Probably, yeah.
Probably.
I'm
But
too
then
stupid to know which one
Proto-Indo-European beats
exactly.
all of them because
Wow, yeah.
Ah, well, yeah.
yeah.
But what about just proto?
That's my favorite one. I love the
Like-
proto language.
One of my friends is Kurdish, and she'll just anything I say, she's like, "Yeah, you know, Kurds made that." Yeah, no, Kurds first. Like, oh yeah, language Kurds. It's
Oh
Kurd
yeah,
first.
yeah. I know a lot of Macedonians like that.
Yeah, it's like typical Greeks and Macedonians. No, that word, Greek. Yeah,
yeah.
There's a hilarious Twitter account. It's called like Balkan YouTube comments.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love it.
I love
Just
that one.
endless snapshots of just like, oh yeah, this Balkan country, we invented that. Or your mother was an Albanian and your father was a Serb. Yes, and that is why we are the most glorious. Like, no, that's an insult.
Wow.
The only thing
Yeah,
they can
yeah.
ever
It-
agree
it-
on is that they all
It's
hate
really
Kurds.
crazy around
Poor
here.
Albanians.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're gonna call it at that because my girlfriend is staring at me at the other side of the screen. She's gonna kill me if I don't leave this room soon. Sorry.
Good reason.
Yeah. But
Thank
it
you
was
so much for sticking
so
with
great.
us, guys.
Absolutely.
We hope to talk to you soon. And again, I've been watching you for years. It's awesome
Yeah.
to actually get to talk to you.
Definitely.
Anytime.
Well,
Ah, it's been a pleasure, lads.
this has been Questioning History, the banter episode. Till next time.
See you, everyone.